recording, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can
like,
dig it.
solid. Right on.
Hey, man, what's your name?
Mother, mother, there's too many of you cry. Brother, brother, brother,
Good morning and
there's far
welcome to
too
the Earl
many
Ingram
of
Show.
you die.
As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. That's 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Calvin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Earl. How was your holiday weekend?
Man, my holiday weekend was absolutely great. And I'll tell you, man, I listened to the shows that you put together for Christmas Day and the day after, and I have to say, man, they were absolutely spectacular. Um, I don't get to say it enough, man, but I appreciate the work that you do. Um, my show would not be what it is. It's our show, first off, and it wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for you and the work that you do. Sometimes we don't say it enough. I appreciate what you do. You really showed, man, the talent that you have in organizing and putting together the program over the weekend, man. I'm thankful to have you around, man, and I hope we can hang around a lot longer.
I really appreciate that, Earl, and I'm not going anywhere if you'll keep me around.
Absolutely, man. We're a team, man. So thank you very much for, what you did, man. I really appreciate it. But I got a lot did a lot of thinking over, that that 4 days to me away from the show is a long time. And so I had a lot of time to reflect on things and, what I wanted to talk about and those types of things as we start preparing to move into 2024, which is just around the corner. And civic media and what all this is about, right? Sometimes, we get into doing our own things as host and so we focus on things from our perspective. But the true perspective of what civic media is about and what all of this vastness of these radio stations that have come together, bringing all of these people together from all across the state of Wisconsin, is really about trying to bring people together. That is it. The politics and all the other things, but it's really getting people to sit down from different walks of life, different places, and understand that we are all the same. Never mind all the other things that keep us separated. And there are people who benefit by keeping the American people separated. There are people who benefit by keeping black and white separated. There are people who benefit by keeping Christians and Muslims together. There are people who benefit by keeping rural and urban America separated. And so, as we move into the early spring, Sandy and I are going to be moving across all of these vast networks that comprise civic media. We're going to get to know you. We're going to give you an opportunity to get to know us if you choose to. And we're going to have some dialogue and some conversation about, Wisconsin. Wisconsin comprises a lot of different, cities and counties. And people don't know one another. And so, I'm a city dweller, man. That's where I've been for, 69 years. And so I don't know much about rural Wisconsin. And likewise, many of you don't know much about urban Wisconsin. But the thing that we have in common is we're Wisconsinites. We're from the same state. And so, it is important that we as Wisconsinites work collectively in order to bring the benefits of our nation and the resources that we send to, Washington, D.C., that we get a fair share of that back. And so it's important to understand that if you're struggling in rural Wisconsin, there are people struggling in urban Wisconsin, and that we need to build an alliance, which is really what civic media is about. And I can't expect others to do that if I don't begin to do that myself. And so that is a pledge that, I'm making for Sandy and I, as we will be traveling throughout the state and meeting people and hearing what it is, your issues are. But I guarantee you, your issues are similar to the issues of the urban poor in Milwaukee and Racine and Kenosha, and even the urban poor in rural, Wisconsin. Poor is poor. Doesn't matter whether you're in, Rhinelander or Superior, or whether you're in Milwaukee or Racine. Poor is poor. And so all of us need to collectively come together and bring pressure on a system that has rendered us that. Because those of you who live in rural America, who have been around as long as I have, you remember the good days, as well as I remember the good days in urban Milwaukee. And I know those things have changed as well as those things have changed in rural America. So there's this article in the USA Today called Rural America, a farm boy's guide to bringing difficult conversations at the holiday dinner table. And it just so happens the guy who wrote this article, his name is Brian Riesinger, and I'm reaching out to him to bring him on the air. He grew up on a family farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin, but he's also worked in campaigns for U.S. Senator Representative Lamar Alexander and Ron Johnson, as well as Scott Walker for governor. He has a great perspective. He walked from Washington, D.C. to New York. He's lived in different cities across the nation. And his perspective on the difference in what's happening in rural America and what's happening in urban America, I think is unique because he's been able to bridge both. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789, 844-967-2789. So I want to have a conversation this morning, and I'd love to have it with you about why are we so divided when it comes rural to urban? Here, according to Brian Rieslinger, who grew up again in Sauk County, Wisconsin, he had this to say. It was 2020, and I was far from the family farm where I had grown up, surrounded by the shining glass skyscrapers of downtown Nashville. The banker on the other end of the phone was talking to me. From what I knew was a sleek office just cleared of elaborate holiday decorations, and how hard the Great Recession had been on banks when he said it. This isn't like the really good years. I remember thinking, when the hell were those? As the skyscrapers around me got taller, his office miles away got bigger, and I started to get really suddenly pissed. America's rural-urban divide is real, but can it be bridged? What I was experiencing was America's rural-urban divide, which is getting worse, and now ranks as one of our country's biggest splits. Now, alongside race, education, and class. So, the divide, one of the biggest splits in our nation, is the urban-rural divide. And so, from the perspective of an urban dweller and a guy who's only lived in urban Milwaukee, I don't know what the issues are in rural America that are so different from the issues in poor urban areas. Phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. You know, I can have the conversation alone, but I will, as you already know. So, if you live in a community where the access to jobs, that livable wage jobs, is not there anymore, I understand the pain that you experience and why you're angry. But what you need to know is that same pain is in urban areas. Certain parts of urban areas. Listen, there are parts of urban Milwaukee that you could look at and say, hey, man, I think I'm in Miami. If you're downtown during the summer on the lakefront and you see all of those beautiful, new tall apartment buildings, that cost $400,000 to rent in Milwaukee. You say, wow, man, Milwaukee is rolling, and the people who live in Milwaukee are rolling. Let me get to the other side of this. We've got to take a short hiatus. 844-967-2789. We're going to delve into this the first hour of the show, and then we'll be joined by Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. We'll return.
We're listening to the Shaw, WAUK.
1 in 4 Americans today are living with a disability. I'm one of them. People with disabilities are extremely talented, resilient problem solvers that have so much to offer. And we've got a trusted ally on our side, an organization we can rely on, Easter Seals. Easter Seals is leading the way to full equity, inclusion, and access to healthcare, employment, and education for people with disabilities, families, and communities. That's my Easter Seals. Make it yours.
Learn more and get involved at easterseals.com.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The Shaw, WAUK.
Trying hard to recreate what had yet to be created. Once in her life, she musters a smile for his nostalgic tale. Never coming near what he wanted to say. reality. Anybody else would surely know.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. It's 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. You know, I'm talking about the rural urban divide that is real, and you know how we got there, and why I can't seem to understand, outside of the fact that people don't know, people who live in urban areas in urban Wisconsin don't know much about the city of Milwaukee, and people who live in cities like Racine, Kenosha, Madison don't know much about urban Milwaukee, urban Wisconsin, because you know we don't cross one another's paths. You know, again, I haven't been many places in urban Wisconsin, even though, you know, I'm 69 years of age. I have, there's so many places I have not visited, I don't know about. So I can only go by what I hear people say. Same thing as far as people who live in urban areas when it comes to Milwaukee. Now, I'm talking about an article written by Mr. Brian Riesinger. He grew up on a family farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin, and you know he's traveled and done some things with his life, and he wrote this article. It's in today's USA Today. Let's go to Timothy. Good morning to you, Timothy. What do you say?
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. Where are you from?
Hayward, Wisconsin.
Okay, that's just what I'm talking about, sir. Let's your thoughts.
Well, speaking of rural and urban Wisconsin, I'm not as knowledgeable either, I'll admit. But I will say that I've actually found a comforting embrace when I've traveled. Easy to the city. Some of the cities I've been to, you know, Madison. I've been to Milwaukee. I've been to years and years ago. I was only a teenager then. I'm 41 now. La Crosse, Wausau, Eau Claire, Superior, Ashland.
Okay, so those are
and
those are mainly rural areas, and so in those rural areas, you know the conversations, you know over the dinner table, at the bar stool, um, that that things people have forgotten rural uh, America, and most of the focus has been on urban America. Have you heard those thoughts?
Not so much, so I suppose. I mean, I've felt the comforting embrace, though. I mean, I've always been welcome.
No, so let me ask you.
Never.
No, I'm talking about from the perspective of what's happened financially. Okay, so Hayward is not what Hayward was 30 years ago. Clearly, paper mills and farms have mom and pop farms are no longer there because of you know corporate farms that have come in and kind of taken over, and towns are struggling and people are struggling, and excuse me, and in a lot of instances that's kind of blamed on, you know, all the resources and everything going to uh the urban centers. Your thoughts?
When excuse me, it seems like there's a lot of change. When you spoke of what you spoke of when you spoke of Hayward, I think of Hayward and I think of the change that's happened here, and the chance for change to be embraced, freeing themselves. Like, it seems like we're maybe possibly stuck in the past sometimes, and that great divide maybe possibly doesn't have to exist, and we're within a transition period here within the urban and or rural, and compared to the urban, just everywhere in general, I'll say.
Right.
And we need to rebuild, refocus, regroup, and relax our thoughts to see what is in front of us, and just and if something needs to be, instead of building new, like so much new can start. I went through the building boom in during the early 2000s, where it seemed like we were building lake home after lake home after lake home after lake home.
Right. Lake
And
homes.
a lot, huh?
Lake homes, that doesn't mean the average, person who lives in Hayward can afford the lake home that they're building.
I could speak as being one of those average people who live in Hayward. I live in a Catholic managed apartment complex. My Social Security was approved. Going through the process was somewhat stressful occasionally, but it was managed.
So
And
Timothy,
you're
you're
poverty.
you're a young guy. You're 41 years old, and so your parents and grandparents saw Hayward in a different light at a different time than your generation, and those are the things that I want to focus on. What brought those changes about? The same thing that brought about those changes in Hayward are the same things that brought about the changes in Milwaukee, in Racine, in Kenosha. Middle class opportunities dried up. The paper mills walked away, right? And then corporations came in and took control, over the farms. No longer mom and pop farms could no longer make it because corporate farms came in and squeezed everybody else. So at the root of all of it is not one another. It's not the urban people who brought about those changes in rural America. And so it's not the rural people who brought about the changes in urban America. That's why it's important that we have the conversation, man. Thank you very much for the call. Our phone lines are open at 844-967-2789. Got to take a short hiatus. We'll return.
As she rises to her apology, anybody else would surely know. He's watching her go. But a fool believes. Easy. The wise man has the power to reason away. But if love can come, and love can go.
Hits weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on The Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM, WAUK.
Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. The universities of Wisconsin want to double the number of international students in the next 5 years. More international students would boost the UW system's overall enrollment and make campuses more diverse. An international recruitment firm called Shorelight will help. Android phone users in Wisconsin can expect some of a $700 million nationwide antitrust settlement with Google. Alexandra Sosnowski is New Hampshire's Assistant Attorney General.
With antitrust and disinjunctive relief, the hope is that the markets will open up and there could be future competitors that enter the space.
About 100 million eligible customers in all 50 states will split the settlement. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now here's what you need to know closer to home.
For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Waukesha police have made an arrest following a series of vandalism incidents on Christmas Day. The identity of the woman taken into custody isn't yet known. Police say over 20 cases of vandalism took place, with damage estimates possibly topping $200,000. Janesville police have confirmed the safety of that city's Blaines Farm and Fleet and its parking lot following a potential bomb threat. Dane County Bomb Squad technicians declared the area safe at around 8 last night after the initial call and shutdown. Everyone in the store was told to leave and the parking lot was cleared out. More information should be released today. Gas prices in Waukesha and Milwaukee counties are about the same, with both about 50 cents cheaper than the national average. AAA has the average locally today at $2.60 a gallon. And that's what you need to know. I'm Stuart J. Waddles, WAUK News.
Timeout. All right. Remember, we're a team that plays together. Listen, the winning will take care of itself. We just have to get everyone involved.
In interscholastic sports, we celebrate what makes every one of us unique. And in the pursuit of a common goal, everyone in the huddle, in the bleachers, and in the community comes together. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Bucks play the Nets. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Milwaukee Bucks take on the Brooklyn Nets tonight in New York. The Bucks coming off a 129-122 loss to the Knicks Christmas Day. How do you rebound? Head coach Adrian Griffin.
Again, prepare them, be the most prepared team that we can be. No, it's not going to be easy, but if you do the things that go on to win, you got a good chance.
College football, the Wisconsin Badgers in the ReliaQuest Bowl next Monday morning against LSU. Kickoff 11 a.m. Luke Fickell has hired one of his former players, Kenny Guyton, who played quarterback for him at Ohio State, to serve as receivers coach.
Learned a lot, played quarterback, and so playing quarterback on that level, you learn so much. And so I got a chance to play for some legendary coaches. With Jim Tressel for 2 years. I had Luke Fickell, who's doing an awesome job now. I had Urban Meyer for the last 2. So when you have those names around you, those greatness around you, and every day a learning experience.
That's the Badgers' new receivers coach, Kenny Guyton. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
Partly cloudy today. We'll get to 41 for a high this afternoon. The wind north at 5 to 15. Tonight, partly cloudy this evening. Cloudy with a few scattered rain showers after midnight. Our low 34. Tomorrow, cloudy. Scattered showers. Could get 1 to 2/10 of an inch of rain with a high near 42. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Temperature now 24.
Be a part of the resistance. Check out the Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Monday nights at 7 on The Shaw. 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK. And on the Civic Media app.
You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app too? And if you miss a show or game, find it wherever you get your podcasts or on our website, civicmedia.us.
Keeping Southeast Wisconsin informed, engaged, and
You don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, the time will tell. You telling me the things you're gonna do for me. I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. No more need for taking it to the street. Oh, no.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. You can text us at that same number. You know, the Doobie Brothers. You don't know me, but I'm your brother. You don't know me, but I'm your brother. That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about this morning. Rural divide versus the urban divide. And, if you're just joining us, I was talking about an article written by a Wisconsinite, Mr. Brian Riesinger. It's in today's USA Today. He was raised on a small family farm in Sauk County, Wisconsin. Was able to then, leave there and travel the nation and get involved in politics. Worked in the campaigns of U.S. Senate, Lamar Alexander, Ron Johnson, as well as, worked in Scott Walker's campaign. So he has some vast knowledge about the difference between rural America, where he was able to get away from, and then live in a much bigger urban reality over the last 15, 20 years of his life. And he had this to say. And let's go to David from Mequon. Good morning to you, David.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. So I've actually been to almost, I think there's only 2 counties I've not been into the state of Wisconsin in my lifetime. But what I was going to say to you was, what's interesting, the northwest part of the state, for a gentleman who's calling from Hayward, Hayward has that big cross-country skiing event every year. It's the largest in the country that they have. And I've been up there a few times. I actually had a friend that lived in Cable, Wisconsin, which is just northeast of there. And they actually are more associated, along with like Hudson and some of the cities over there, Eau Claire. They're much more familiar with the Twin Cities. There's a big connection there. As a matter of fact, you can get a lot of the news from the Twin Cities as to what's going on in the Twin Cities as opposed to Milwaukee. So I think that that's one of the reasons why they don't understand Milwaukee as well, because a lot of the influence is actually coming from across the border in Minnesota.
So Dave, let me say this. Let me say this. So my focus is not on any particular town or even the city of Milwaukee. It's an urban-rural divide nationally, where people who live in urban parts of these states are struggling economically. That's a fact. And somehow, because people aren't getting to different places, they don't know the conditions that exist in let's say Central City, Milwaukee. But the struggle that we have is that we don't communicate with one another. And so we can't have the dialogues that we need to have, because the people who are strangling rural America are strangling, urban cities as well. And that's greed. That's corporations and global corporations that have gone global, that have taken the jobs out of middle America and caused the pain that middle America is facing. Nobody can tell me, even though I haven't spent time in rural Wisconsin or rural parts of the nation, that the reason so many people are struggling in rural America is their livelihood. The farms are gone. And who took them away?
Combination of both corporation and government, unfortunately.
Well, how did the
And what I
government
mean by
take? How
that
did the government take it away, Dave?
eminent domain. If you look at the amount of land that, people, obviously the Midwest in particular, we're known as flyover country.
Hey, Dave, is Tom from LA always says the people are the government, right?
Yes, but
okay,
again,
so
if you look at what's going on between corporations and the federal government, they're slowly gobbling up a lot of land, and as they're doing that, they're really squeezing out some of the rural communities where.
Hey, Dave, the federal government are elected officials, the people we elected.
I understand.
So we're
And if you
responsible,
look-
whatever
like I
they're
said,
doing. Go ahead.
If you look west of the Mississippi, over almost 50% of the land is owned by the federal government now.
Okay, so Dave.
I mean, it's a huge amount of land
So Dave,
that's controlled by which means you and I can't utilize it.
So Dave, that may be factual, but I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that people are struggling financially in rural America because the federal government has taken over too much of the land. I think that may have something to do with it, but it's not the root cause of why people are struggling.
Look at what's happening with the smaller farmer in the state of Wisconsin. Who's dictating to the local farmer as to what kind of new regulations that they are subjected to.
Hey, Dave, the
And if
local
you look-
farmer.
and if you
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm saying to you is this, Earl. If you look, obviously, everybody's worried about carbon dioxide, right? And one of the things that are being passed right now at the federal level is that the farmers are going to have to control the methane from
Okay,
the
so Dave,
pigs
I
and
would
from
say
the
this to you.
cows.
Dave, I'm cutting you off because I would say this to you. I think any local farmer will call here and say, that's not the issue. It's that corporate farm that's next to him that has caused him the consternation and caused him to be in the position he's in. Not the things you're talking about. It's that major corporate farm that's sucking it all up. He can't compete.
But Earl, the big farmer is the one that can afford to adhere to the regulations that's being applied by the federal government, where the smaller farmer cannot.
No, hey, Dave, you're telling me that the smaller farmer who's had the family farm for decades, and now all of a sudden a corporate farm moves right next door to him, gobbles up the land, and is able to do what he does, that the biggest threat to that family farmer isn't the corporate farm, it's the other things you're telling me?
It's a combination
Oh,
of
okay.
both.
Well,
That's what I'm trying to say to you,
No,
because if you look at the regulations that are being passed, the only ones who can afford it are the big corporate farms.
Hey, Dave. Thank you very much for the call. I really appreciate it. We can't begin to work through, what the issues are. If it's going to be this, well, regulations are the things that are causing people to lose their farms. That's not it. It's not the regulations. It has everything to do with the fact that the average citizen is forgotten in this equation. And that's corporations that call the shots, and the average citizen, and whether you're in rural America or whether you're in urban America, is lost in this equation. And it's also the fact that we can control that through who we elect. That's at the root of it. If people are doing things to hurt you and I, then don't vote for them. I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican. Let's go to Jake from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Jake. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the point. But you just said it's who you elect, and the people who you elect to make the laws or do the regulations are the ones who let CAFOs get away with polluting your water.
Right.
Well, a smaller farmer is not going to pollute your water, right? It's just because they're on a smaller scale.
Right.
Not only that, but it's kind of like also the Forever Chemicals up north from the whatever. Guess whose fault was that? It wasn't the corporate. Well, obviously it's the corporation's fault for getting away with it. But the Republicans said, sure, it's not a problem. You can pollute everybody in northern Wisconsin, make them drink bottled water. So, Dave, I do understand. I mean, it's not just completely one or the other, but you're just pointing out the fact that Republicans are terrible stewards of the environment and terrible stewards of small farmers and terrible stewards of pretty much just about anything unless you make $1 million a year. Then they give a crap about you because they want you to vote for them.
So Jake, are you a city urban dweller? Are you from urban America?
Actually, I'm actually from Waukesha County.
Okay.
I grew up kind of in a very rural area.
Right.
But then I, moved to Milwaukee, and I've been in Milwaukee for a while, so I kind of have a hybrid view at this.
Right.
And
So go ahead.
Yeah. So when I grew up, there was a kind of a disconnection between urban and rural, and the problems were separate and pretty much different. But now with, like rural, most of Waukesha County is not super rural anymore. You can go anywhere and see strip malls going up. You can see, you can get stuff.
Well, Waukesha is closer. When you're talking about, rural parts of places further away, you got friends in rural parts of the state.
Yeah.
Who struggle. I mean, it's a tough slate for them to try to get through. I mean, because things have changed for the worse, and so we gotta figure that out, man, because people created that environment, right? Officials created that environment, and they created that, and we're separated because of those things. And that's the point I'm trying to make. That's what I'm trying to get to, man. And it's not that I didn't, don't agree with what Dave had to say, but Dave is, instead of pointing at what the real issues are for people who are financially struggling and going through the difficulties that they are dealing with, it's not that the government has too many regulations, right? I'm a guy who believes we need to have regulations. Unbridled capitalism is horrible. And what we've been dealing with is unbridled corporatism. They took capitalism away and it turned into corporatism. Corporations run this country. Anybody who doesn't know that, I think, is kind of short-sighted, or they're just not aware. The corporations run America. They've done it for a long, long time, and the corporations don't include you and I. And until we come to the realization that both Democrat and Republican are beholding to the corporations more than they are you and I, then we're going to continue to point the finger at one another as if it's the citizens that have caused this chasm, and that's not the case. 844-967-2789. Kurt and others will return.
This is the Shaw WAUK.
Robert Hack Diamonds pays cash for your unwanted gold, silver, and even diamonds. That's right. Robert Hack Diamonds wants to make you an offer on your gold, silver, and diamonds. The process is very simple. No appointment needed. Just come on in, sit down in a nice, relaxed atmosphere, and the staff of Robert Hack Diamonds will evaluate your unwanted gold, silver, and diamonds and make you an offer on the spot. Then you can decide if you want a deal or no deal. Robert Hack Diamonds can also convert your old jewelry into something new or trade in your outdated pieces for something new and exciting. Many people inherit jewelry that might not be your taste, but you are sentimental. Why not have Robert Hack Diamonds take the golden gems and create something for you? So many options at Robert Hack Diamonds. Again, Robert Hack Diamonds pays cash for your unwanted gold, silver, and diamonds. See them in Brookfield, just east of Moreland on Greenland Avenue, or 76 in Layton, right on the corner in Greenfield. RobertHackDiamonds.com.
You're listening to the Shaw WAUK.
Why'd you tell me this? While you look for my reaction. What do you need to know? Don't you know I'll always be the one? You don't have to prove to me you're beautiful to strangers. I got love and eyes. Oh, in this life, anyone could tell. Any fool could see who you need. I know you want to well. You don't have to prove to be beautiful to strangers. I got loving eyes, and I can't tell him you belong to me. Tell him you were fooling.
All right, welcome back. The Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us that same number. Music soothes the savage beast, Calvin. Anyway, so we're talking about, the difference between rural and urban, and with the elections right around the corner, it's critically important that we have these dialogues and conversations, and I'm going to be having them. Let's go to the phone lines. And Kurt from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Kurt. You say what?
Well, I'm impressed with your understanding of the situation. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks who called in are not hybrids. They don't own property in rural and urban areas. And I do. I've owned a farm for about 25 years now. And my parents are both from rural areas. And I have a small farm, and I have been litigating against these CAFOs for 25 years. And what you said earlier is exactly correct. It's the corporations that are causing all of these problems, including the divide between people in rural and urban areas. And the unfortunate thing is that Mr. Urban or Mrs. Rural, they don't have the time to, or they don't have the opportunity to understand what the problems are. And because I'm a hybrid, because I, work in both,
right,
urban and rural areas, I can see what's going on. So I'm with you 100%. And what I would probably like to do is carry this discussion further one-on-one if we have a chance to do that. Because I can.
So, Kurt, leave your phone number with Calvin, and yeah, we will.
Absolutely.
We will, because it is so critically important that we heal this divide, because we have an opportunity to start turning this around this next year. But we can't turn it around unless people understand we're being, pitted against one another. And we're struggling together, independently, but the same entities that are causing the pain in urban America are causing the same pain in rural America. Leave your number. Thank you very much, and I'll definitely get in touch with you. All right, thank you. Let's go to Tom from West Dallas. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what?
Good morning, Earl. My take on this whole thing is, it is the corporate farms. But I think this boils more down to also is how rural people have been bamboozled thinking that the Republican Party is on their side and fighting for them. And they will always see Democrats as evil people. And if you're in the city, you're a Democrat, therefore you know nothing about us, which isn't true. Just look and see what Ron Johnson did for the state. Nothing. While Tammy Baldwin has done a lot. But the rural people don't hear that. And they think that because the Republicans are on their side, they vote for Ron Johnson. And that's why he wins in the rural section, because they believe this. Corporate farms. What do? They open a big dairy farm with 1,000 head of cattle in a building that never goes outside, and the government gives them subsidies left and right. Well, what subsidies do the small farmers get? None. They get nothing. They're just fighting, and that's why they go out of business, because they cannot compete. Our state government or all states' governments are all on the corporate side and do not care about the rural farmer anymore, the small farmer. But again, they are bamboozled into believing that the Republicans, now I'm not saying that the Democrats don't do some of this too, but it's mainly Republicans who go and make them think that the Democrats are the bad guy and they're going to take everything away. They're going to tax you to death. Well, if you're being taxed to death, well, the Republicans are in charge of Wisconsin. Why are you being taxed to death now? So there's no one. That's why if someone, I'm so happy you guys are at least statewide with all this, and hopefully someone stumbles across your station so they can hear this and think, oh wow, maybe they have a point. But Democrats do horrible on messaging. They need to get out there and say, look, this is what's really going on here. But I don't know why, but for some reason that message never gets out, or they never push to do it.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. You're on point. We've got to take a short hiatus, and we'll return.
That you belong to me. You belong to me. Girl, you belong to me. Telling me's a stranger. You belong to me. Girl, that you are fooling. Yeah, you belong to me. Please, girl, you belong to me. You belong to me. You belong to me.
Your home of the Earl Ingram Show. Weekday mornings from 8 till 10 on The Shaw. 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK. This is your hometown radio. Refreshed. Keeping you informed, entertained, and connected locally across the Civic Media Network. Roll into this Friday night and strike a chord of fun, food, and music at Foxview Lanes in Waukesha. The Friday night live music party kicks off at 8 p.m. and goes until midnight every Friday night. And the best part of this party, there's no cover charge. While you're having fun, grab dinner and take advantage of $2 off all sandwiches on Friday night. This Friday night, enjoy the music and fun of Bail Jumpers. 2440 West Sunset Drive in Waukesha. Call 262-544-2010 or check out foxviewlanes.com. You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
CBS News Brief. Michigan Supreme Court has rejected an attempt to keep Donald Trump off the state's GOP primary ballot as an insurrectionist. CBS's Scott McFarland says the FBI is investigating threats to Colorado judges who said he should be off the ballot there.
An FBI official tells CBS News the agency will vigorously pursue investigations of any threat or use of violence.
The Secretaries of State and Homeland Security head to Mexico for help with the border crisis. CBS's Adrienne Bard.
On Mexico's end, it's not clear what more the leaders or politicians can offer to help put an end to the unprecedented wave of migrants heading to the U.S.
CBS's Tom Hansen is watching post-Christmas flyers at New York City's LaGuardia Airport.
Crowds are rolling in nice and early this morning, but for the estimated 7.5 million air travelers this week, messy weather could lead to even more travel chaos.
CBS News Brief. I'm Peter King.
Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. One of Wisconsin's state university chancellors could be out of a job tonight. The Board of Regents has scheduled a special closed meeting for tonight to consider discipline or termination for one of the heads of Wisconsin's 13 state schools. La Crosse's Joe Gow and Whitewater's Beverly Copper were the only chancellors denied pay raises in 2018. Kwanzaa celebrations are underway. The holiday celebrates African heritage, among other things, but Nichelle Hayes says people of all faiths and races are welcome.
It might be that you only celebrate at your home with your nuclear family. It might be that you come together with the people in your neighborhood or your broader community.
As many as 18 million people celebrate Kwanzaa around the world. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Here's what you need to know closer to home.
For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. A Washington County man has been charged after allegedly impersonating a sheriff's deputy to solicit explicit photos from a woman and trying to extort her. 35-year-old Daniel Anderson, who's a tow truck driver, is accused of offering to make criminal charges disappear in exchange for the photos and sexual acts. He also allegedly attempted a similar scheme with another woman by posing as her husband's divorce attorney. Prosecutors are pursuing a pair of felony charges in the case. A white foam was spotted in the Fox River near downtown Waukesha over the past weekend, prompting a call to the fire department. After testing, authorities confirmed that the substance was not hazardous. Officials with Waukesha Water also say they were unable to identify the foam, and they encourage people to report any unusual sightings in the river, even if they turn out to be harmless. And that's what you need to know. I'm Stuart J. Waddles, WAUK News.
Toasting to the new year? This celebration has been going on around the world for thousands of years. Many revelers include resolutions for the year ahead. It's an opportunity for renewal and to set some goals, whether you focus on health, work, or relationships. Intentions to improve your life is the best possible thing to do for 2024. I'm Terry Barr, and from all of us with the Civic Media Radio Network, happy holidays.
Bucks play the Nets. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Milwaukee Bucks take on the Brooklyn Nets tonight in New York. The Bucks coming off a 129-122 loss to the Knicks Christmas Day. How do you rebound? Head coach Adrian Griffin.
Again, prepare them, be the most prepared team that we can be. No, it's not going to be easy, but if you do the things that go on to win, you got a good chance.
College football, the Wisconsin Badgers in the ReliaQuest Bowl next Monday morning against LSU. Kickoff 11 a.m. Luke Fickell has hired one of his former players, Kenny Guyton, who played quarterback for him at Ohio State, to serve as receivers coach.
Learned a lot, played quarterback, and so playing quarterback on that level, you learn so much. And so I got a chance to play for some legendary coaches. With Jim Tressel for 2 years, I had Luke Fickell, who's doing an awesome job now. I had Urban Meyer for the last 2. So when you have those names around you, those greatness around you, and every day a learning experience.
That's the Badgers' new receivers coach, Kenny Guyton. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Pockets of sunshine peeking out today with partly sunny skies and high temperatures climbing to the low 40s. But overnight, chances of rain start to roll in and could mix with some snow as well, as lows fall to 33 degrees. A trace of accumulation is possible by Thursday morning. Right now, it's 24.
The more than 27,000 union carpenters who call the North Central States home wish you a healthy, happy, and safe holiday season. Unions built the middle class, and union carpenters work hard every day to build our communities while they build good careers that provide for their families. This season, we hope you get to enjoy time with friends and family. Happy holidays from Executive Secretary Treasurer Pat Nelson and the staff of the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters. Did you know this local radio station is part of Civic Media? Learn more about the entire network at civicmedia.us. Waukesha, home of Les Paul, our awesome farmers market.
Don't
Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. If that won't wake you up, Calvin, I don't know what will. The last hour I spent talking about what I think is an issue that we have to work on. And my next guest, and I see you, I'm going to come to you, CJ, after I introduce Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. So, Dr. Craig, I've been talking about the fact that an article that was written is in today's USA Today. It's written by a young man who is from Wisconsin. And, he grew up in rural Wisconsin. His family, had a farm. And so he grew up and was able to do some other things with his life. And I was talking about the urban and rural divide, Dr. Craig, which is one that you know as well as anybody, and why it's so important that we work this out and understand that the same culprits that have caused that pain in rural America is also the same culprits who causing that pain in urban America, and that this is no longer capitalism. It hasn't been for a long time. It's been corporatism, and Americans need to know the difference between the two. Let's go to CJ first, Dr. Craig, and then we'll come to you. Go ahead, CJ.
Thank you, Earl and Dr. Craig. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I find it funny because there is a difference. It's not just farms that are rural. There are companies and small businesses, and most small businesses file singular as a corporation. And I'm sure, Earl, that you work for a corporation. So here's the thing. My dad always said, you got to give a reason for a company to stay in America. You can't tax them to death and expect corporations to stay here. So that's what the Republicans believe. You always misrepresent what we believe, Earl. We believe that we should be competitive tax-wise and regulations-wise. We believe that we should allow small farmers to regulate their commodities along with big corporation farms.
So CJ, I don't, this is not for you to filibuster about what Republicans believe and all those things. I hear you, but you're telling me what I don't know. I worked for a corporation that stood in the city where it was for over 110 years. That corporation stood in the city of Milwaukee. It was called A.O. Smith. And when the families were the chief operating, when the families sat at the seat of the table, whether it was A.O. Smith, Briggs and Stratton, Allen Bradley, the families sat there and they knew the ones who created those companies, and they knew about their commitment to this country, and they knew about their commitment to the communities in which they lived. You're talking to somebody who knew that, and who knew that those companies stayed here because they had believed in their communities as well. So when you say, this can't be done, it was done, CJ. And then what changed it? After those patriarchs of those companies left and CFOs and CEOs took their places, that's when that type of mentality that you're talking about came into existence. Thank you very much for the call. Good morning to you, Dr. Craig. Your thoughts?
Good morning and happy holidays.
Yes,
and
yes, it is.
Given that
Happy
this
holidays.
is originally a Christian holiday, though it's celebrated by a lot of non-Christians, this is an appropriate topic because Christianity, as well as the other great world religions, is about universal humanity, about coming together and universal human fellowship and bending our divisions, right?
Yes.
And so, because we all under God, all creations of God, whether you believe in God or not, I'm saying in terms of the Christian holidays, many secular people who are non-religious also share that value very strongly. So the divide between rural and urban Wisconsin, that's a great topic for right now, for a couple days after Christmas. Also, what you said about what corporations have done to damage and destroy communities. And let me give CJ his due quickly, Earl. He's not wrong about the legal definition of corporation. All nonprofits, charities are corporations. So corporation has a different legal meaning, broader. There are different types of corporations. They're not profit-making corporations.
Right.
But the point being that in popular parlance, when you say corporation, people think of the big, powerful for-profit corporations that have, thanks to the Reagan Revolution and Milton Friedman, their sole purpose in maximizing their profits and their shareholder value, period. And what you just described very compellingly, Earl, and I've heard you do it before, is your personal experience where for profit, they decided to basically pull the rug out from under the people who made the company's prosperity possible, take the money that was fungible and put it somewhere else to get even more profit, to do a very unchristian, unreligious thing. And this has been justified, rationalized under the view that somehow big corporations and others acting in their self-interest will lead to a common interest. It certainly did not for the city of Milwaukee, which used to have the most prosperous African-American middle class in the country in the late 1970s and now has the lowest relative incomes for African-Americans of the 50 largest cities in the country. That is because corporations abandoned the people who made their prosperity and wealth possible. Same thing is happening in rural areas. That's your point. CJ, who did lay out, the conservative argument quite well this morning, talked about how you could create, by not having regulation, free competition where small farmers could do well and large corporations could do well. That is a nice kind of vision, right, Earl? It's not the reality.
Pie in the sky.
The reality is large corporations rigged the system to make sure the small guys would lose, and family farms have all but disappeared in the state. Progressively, this has been a known problem for decades and decades and decades, and nothing has been done about it, including by the representatives of rural areas, because the people who control power at the federal level and the state level are the large corporations, not the little guy, not the small farmers. And so if you want to have a vibrant small farm community, which people like the Farm Bureau wrap themselves in but are actually against, right? You need to create conditions where it's possible. And that requires the use of our government, and that's where conservatives will not go.
You know, Dr. Craig, you and Citizen Action blanketing rural America because you understand what is going on. And I was saying, Dr. Craig, that one of the reasons, is that rural America doesn't know about urban America doesn't know about rural America. But the same issues are intertwined in what has happened to the prosperity of both urban America as well as rural America. And that if we can, as you guys are doing, build that dialogue, as civic media is doing, build that dialogue across the states, then we can begin to take back, what the nation was for all of us, Dr. Craig. But it has to begin with dialogue. Is that right?
Yes, dialogue where average people talk to average people, where it's not 30-second television spots, right?
Right.
Those are going to exist. We can't banish them, but deeper conversations between people within their own communities is what changes hearts and minds, and then action, and then creates the conditions where elected officials are held accountable. New maps that are democratic will help as well, which, of course, there was a breakthrough right before Christmas.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that
decision. And so it's a bait and switch. So through propaganda, mass media money, basically converted into propaganda, what rural people are told is, don't blame us. We're not the problem. That is the big corporations, the powerful. It's something someone is doing that's different than you in Milwaukee. It's Milwaukee's urban problems. It's the more diverse Black and brown people there who are being irresponsible. So it's a bait and switch. They have nothing to do with each other. Both are actually suffering under the same problem, corporate malfeasance and taking all the money, which is, corporations are where the wealthiest people in our country hold their money and make their money. So they're behind corporations. They're created. New ones are minted by corporations doing as they do. And so the deeper conversations we need to have, get people to understand that, I'll give you a rural issue. We've spent more than enough money.
Dr. Craig, do me a favor. Hold that thought. Got to pay some bills. 844-967-2789. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. I couldn't find anybody better equipped to handle the conversation that we're having this morning than Dr. Craig.
The Shaw, WAUK.
This is Mean Gene Okerlund, and I'm talking with Brett Yulberg, owner of Robert Hack Diamonds. Brett, I hear you pay cash for gold.
Not only gold, but silver, diamonds in any form like jewelry, teeth, coins, flatware.
Why should I sell you my gold?
Why not? Our store is the only store that recommends you shop around before you sell. This way you know you're getting the most money. But if Robert Hack Diamonds can't beat a competitor's offer on your scrap gold, we'll give you $20 just for letting us try.
Hey, what if I'm shy?
You? Well, at Robert Hack Diamonds, we sit with you at a table. We go through your items and make you an offer. You're not pressured, and we offer more on jewelry that we can resell.
Can I trade my gold for a new piece of jewelry?
Of course you can, and not only that, we can custom make a piece of jewelry using your gold and gems.
Hey, there you have it, folks. Sell your gold to my friends at Robert Hack Diamonds. Visit them on 76th and Layton in Greenfield. Robert Hack Diamonds, where they want your business.
This is The Shaw, WAUK.
When I was so low, you were there to lift me up. One thing that I know for sure, you're gonna win life's loving cup.
All right. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Wednesday. That means Wednesdays with my host, guest, Dr. Robert Craig of Citizen Action. You know, Dr. Craig, before we went to break, you were expressing, we were talking about, again, as I've been talking about from the beginning of the show, this divide between rural and urban Milwaukee, America, and you were expressing.
Yeah, I was going to give a concrete example of how corporate power, the power of the most among us, those who have the most money, is harming both urban and rural Wisconsin, and they have the same problem, right? The same that they need to come together on. And so I want to get very specific about specific corporations. The term rural broadband refers to the fact there's a digital divide in two ways. A lot of low-income folks in Milwaukee don't have full access to the internet, and it's really hard to function economically or civically in our society without it, right?
Right.
In rural areas, it's a big issue because a lot of areas simply do not have good internet, and therefore people don't move there. there's this huge opportunity with the huge shift to virtual work, which COVID-19 pandemic accelerated dramatically. We're not going back. They're having to close down all sorts of office space. There's an opportunity for people to live anywhere they want and still work. And so there's an immense, there's a lot of people who would love to live in the gorgeous rural areas across Wisconsin, right? But they can't do it because there isn't reliable internet. And here's the secret. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel has actually done very good over the years, investigative reporting on this with their national corporation, Gannett, the newspaper chain. And they found that we have actually spent enough money as of the Obama administration to have universal broadband, just like we have universal postage, right? That was something we did with the federal government, right? We created a public post office that said no matter where you were, no matter how much in the frontier, you would pay the same for a letter as someone sending it across town in the city. And so we did that very easily in the 19th century. But we've still not done rural broadband because we've given the money to big telecom corporations, and they have taken the money and deliberately not, because there isn't enough accountability, provided it to the hardest to reach areas because they're less profitable, there's less population density, built up things to increase their own profit where there are more people, and gotten away with it. And they're still getting away with it. The money that Biden administration gave to the state of Wisconsin is being given away in an honor system, according to the head of the Public Service Commission. That was in a state hearing. So there's an example of where if you had public broadband, then everyone would have it. Or if you actually had teeth and strong regulation, which we know TJ is against, that required if you're going to take public money to create broadband, people don't have them, then you should darn well be forced to actually do that, right? And so that's an example of how rural areas are being harmed and people are continuing to move out of them because of corporations. We paid them billions for this, and they've not done it. And we're paying them more billions, and they still will not do it until we either make them do it or we replace them. By the way, they're using their power to ban public broadband. Vernon County, a rural county along the Mississippi River, is the only one with their own public county broadband. Telecom went and got the legislation to ban that after the first one was done by Vernon County, so no one else can do that.
You know, Dr. Craig, it is that kind of information, I think, that is at the root of why civic media exists, and what I'd like to do with this show is to give information, factual information, to people who don't get it readily, and so we can talk about all the other things, but elections are next year, Dr. Craig, major elections. And for any of these things to be fixed, the elections are the arbiter of what's going to fix them. But people have to have factual information if we're willing to see the change that is necessary. So, coming on here and beating up people who live in rural America is not going to do anything to change their views on why things are the way they are. But I think if information like what you just gave to people and they hear it, then they can begin to understand the power still does lie with the people, and it's in their votes. And major corporations know that. Not small. I'm not saying small corporations don't, but the major corporations that we're talking about who run everything, Dr. Craig, it's all tied into what's happening politically, and we've all got to understand that.
I'll give you some optimism. Most people
we need it.
Most people left and right agree with that. The reason corporations fund politicians and propaganda efforts that cause division based on race, on geography, where you live, they have to heighten that and make that front and center, or, based on immigrants, right? They allege, immigrants as non-people that we don't have to have any regard for, which is what that right-wing view of immigration is all about. They do that because most people think that corporations have too much power and are not acting their interests, and that they're greedy and that they're harming them. And so there is a bipartisan consensus. It's why the Donald Trumps and the Tucker Carlsons of the world make this facade that they're against corporate power. Ron DeSantis, right? They're really not, but they do that because they know a lot of their voters are concerned about that. For example, most people think healthcare is a right. The people who are denying it are the big healthcare corporations, right? The big hospital chains, insurance, big pharmaceutical companies. So they need to foment this fear of the government, quote unquote, taking it over. But you know what? If in a fair debate, if you talk about insurance company claims denials, hospitals, got billing practices and debt collection practices, because medical debt's still the major cause of bankruptcy. People are rapidly wanting to control it and contain it and support that. So they have to kind of bait and switch, right, and get us to hate each other. So the Christmas season, the holiday season, is a very good time, and the other major holidays, I know this is the beginning of Kwanzaa, Earl, today, is a good time to think about how we overcome those divisions, heal the community, and stop listening to the people who divide us for their own profit and benefit, so they can take most of the wealth that's generated by our whole society, our whole national community.
Dr. Craig, very well said as always. 844-967-2789. Dr. Robert Craig, Executive Director of Citizen Action. Dr. Craig, when we come back, we're going to talk about the redistricting maps. We'll return shortly.
I'll just keep kissing when you turn to keeping my feet on the ground. So fine.
Parkway are fighting traffic on the interstates. This is The Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM, WAUK.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Officials say they'll try to make sure Google doesn't drag out paying its $700 million nationwide antitrust lawsuit settlement. Alexandra Sosnowski is New Hampshire's Assistant Attorney General.
A lot of times with these settlements, you have to file a claim. We're trying to not do that, so that way consumers can receive the direct distribution. It just might take some time.
Wisconsin's Josh Call says people shouldn't have to pay extra because of anti-competitive practices. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is offering first-day hikes at state parks and trails on New Year's Day. There are guided hikes, or you could go it alone. The statewide event is free, but you may need a state park admission sticker or state trail pass. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Now, here's what you need to know closer to home.
For WAUK News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. A seat on a Milwaukee County bench is opening up. Governor Tony Evers is seeking applicants for the Branch 41 position on the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. It's to fill the vacancy created by Judge Audrey Skierowski's resignation, which is effective Saturday. The new judge will serve until July 31st, 2025. Waukesha police have arrested a woman in connection with Christmas Day vandalism incidents. The woman's identity has not yet been disclosed. Police have reported over 20 cases of vandalism with estimated damages potentially exceeding $200,000. Security footage of the suspect has been released. Gas prices in Waukesha and Milwaukee counties are about the same, with both about 50 cents cheaper than the national average. AAA has the average locally today at $2.60 a gallon. And that's what you need to know. I'm Stuart J. Waddles, WAUK News.
Hi, I'm Emily from Weikert Realtors Lake Point in Madison. Home ownership is a big deal, and so is taking the leap into the buying or selling of any property. The Weikert team gets that, and our job is to help you navigate the sales process and provide smooth sailing. You have questions, we have answers. You have worries, we have solutions. Let us open the door to your future home. Weikert Realtors Lake Point, 608-721-8002, 2045 Atwood Avenue. Find more info at weikert-lakepoint.com.
Bucks play the Nets. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Milwaukee Bucks take on the Brooklyn Nets tonight in New York. The Bucks coming off a 129-122 loss to the Knicks Christmas Day. How do you rebound? Head coach Adrian Griffin.
Again, prepare them, be the most prepared team that we can be. No, it's not going to be easy, but if you do the things that go on to win, you got a good chance.
College football, the Wisconsin Badgers in the ReliaQuest Bowl next Monday morning against LSU. Kickoff 11 a.m. Luke Fickell has hired one of his former players, Kenny Guyton, who played quarterback for him at Ohio State, to serve as receivers coach.
Learned a lot, played quarterback, and so playing quarterback on that level, you learn so much. And so I got a chance to play for some legendary coaches. With Jim Tressel for 2 years. I had Luke Fickell, who's doing an awesome job now. I had Urban Meyer for the last 2. So when you have those names around you, those greatness around you, and every day a learning experience.
That's the Badgers' new receivers coach, Kenny Guyton. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Pockets of sunshine peeking out today with partly sunny skies and high temperatures climbing to the low 40s. But overnight, chances of rain start to roll in and could mix with some snow as well, as lows fall to 33 degrees. A trace of accumulation is possible by Thursday morning. Currently, it's 25 degrees.
Tune into The Empowered Caregiver with me, Liza Hellenbrand, every Wednesday evening at 7.
On 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime. Download the Civic Media app from the Apple or Google Play Store, then listen live or whenever you want from anywhere for free.
Broadcasting to Waukesha at 101.1 FM. Broadcasting to Southeast Wisconsin at 540 AM. This is The Shaw, WAUK.
Hey, don't worry, I've been lied to. I've been here many times before. Girl, don't you worry, I know where I stand. I don't need this love, I don't need your hand. I know I could turn, thinking you'd be gone, that I must be prepared anytime to carry on. But minute by minute by minute by minute, I keep holding on. I'll be holding on. I'll be holding minute by minute by minute by minute. I keep holding on.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us at that same number. It's Wednesday. That means Wednesdays with my co-host, my guest, Dr. Robert Craig of Citizen Action. Dr. Craig, man, the maps are going to be redrawn. And so just so people understand, the legislature still will get the opportunity to redraw the maps initially. Is it safe to say that?
Yes, but they have till January 12th. We're on a tight timeline.
Right. And if they are not sufficient, then the states does it go to the governor next or the state Supreme Court who will have the final say?
It depends how the Republicans play it, right?
Well, they're in
I
charge,
mean,
from that perspective with the legislature.
well, question is, are they capable of highly pragmatic maps that are not biased the way the current ones are, that might actually be accepted by this Supreme Court, or whether it sounds like they're betting on being saved by the U.S. Supreme Court. And we can talk about what the grounds would be. There, most legal scholars, that have been interviewed on this, think that there doesn't seem to be any reasonable grounds based on current precedent, but they would never rule out. These are strange times, and this U.S. Supreme Court is by no means predictable.
So is it possible then, Dr. Craig, there's this timeline, and you stated it, January 12th or whatever it is. They want these maps.
March 15th is when the Election Commission has to have the maps. So I think the Supreme Court could move that back a couple weeks if they needed to.
The state Supreme Court? The state Supreme Court?
Right. And that's happened, but it can't happen. It can't happen in the summer. I mean, if March 15th is the current deadline, according to the Wisconsin Election Commission, do they need a little time to move it back to April 7th? Maybe, but it's going to be early spring that this has to be decided one way or another.
So, Dr. Craig, let's say the state Supreme Court doesn't accept the maps that are redrawn by the legislature. And we're talking timelines here because of the election, the federal election. How is it possible if the United States Supreme Court, is that something they would move on as swiftly as need be because of the presidential election, or is that something that would move to the front of the list of issues that the United States Supreme Court will be dealing with?
It totally depends. Last time, you remember this Supreme Court, because Judge Hagedorn switched sides, it first accepted the governor's maps over the legislature.
Right.
And then Amy Coney Barrett, who was the justice that oversees Wisconsin, they have different spatial jurisdictions. In the Rocket docket, this is the one where they can act immediately, but there are no briefs and no public hearing. It's very controversial, their use of the Rocket docket. It was supposed to be used only extreme circumstances. Now they use it regularly. She overturned the governor's maps on a brand new, never seen before claim that they had to prove that it wasn't reverse discrimination, that they'd added an extra majority black district. No such maps had ever been required to pre-prove that. And then the state Supreme Court went and adopted the legislature's maps instead, which were worse than the previous one. So yes, they can act quickly if they wanted. One thing that a UW-Madison legal scholar brought up is that they generally, even in the Rocket docket, don't move until the case is done, and the case isn't done. The case isn't done until the Supreme Court has decided what the maps will be. So there's a question of, they might not do it now, they would do it at the end of the process. You see what I mean? They could also take the case and not enjoin the new maps and have a longer process. It's called granting certiorari. It's a Latin word. It's often abbreviated as cert. And so a petition for cert means that they take the case as a full case. So if they're going to wait until it's decided, what the court has done is they've asked both parties to submit maps. So if they find the Republican maps submitted by January 12th, shall we say, unacceptable, they could just accept what the governor submits. And the question is, what will the governor submit as far as thinking about what is the thing that's most likely to be accepted? They won't just do their pie-in-the-sky maps. Probably neither will, but don't know how they're going to play it. And it also says, though, if you've thought about the problem, what if Robin Vos, just the way he gavels out special sessions, just refuses to provide the maps by January 12th? The decision says that if they don't get any maps, they can just draw them themselves. So they will draw them themselves if they do not get maps from the legislature, but they presumably would have maps from the Democratic Party, and they would just accept those. So it doesn't seem to me, from what I know now, that Robin Vos simply not providing maps is a viable course for him.
You know, Dr. Craig, if my recollection is right, the governor's maps that were drawn were not acceptable to many Democrats. And many
They were
people
still gerrymandered for Republicans, but they designed them to potentially win Judge Hagedorn, and they did. But then there was the unexpected intervention by the very interventionist Justice Comey Barrett, a Trump appointee, as everyone remembers, very controversially.
So, Dr. Craig, this still sounds like, considering, the importance of the state of Wisconsin, this is still, unpredictable of where it's going to land and whether or not these things will be worked out before, the election time.
Yeah, at this point, absent, you see, most legal scholars think the Supreme Court intervention is unlikely because they chose the narrowest grounds that were entirely state law and state constitution and tried to avoid anything that involved federal law or the federal constitution. And so they would have extremely limited grounds to potentially do it, and they would have to make new law, though that's the problem. This Supreme Court has a bunch of politicians and robes on it, right-wing politicians, who are willing just to make new law to get what they want. So we'll see. It requires 4 of them to take it as a full case, only 4. So if you consider that Thomas and Alito are going to do almost anything bad, it's a question of whether there are 2 more that would take this step. But let's leave that aside. Then there will be new maps, but they're going to be remedial maps. They're designed only to deal with the narrow constitutional issues that are in the case. They didn't take all the issues in the case, just one of them, actually. It's a direct violation of the state constitution not to have contiguous maps, that is, all the territory touching the territory, because then you could just make crazy districts that are like, God knows what, right? Some sort of patch quilt all over the state in order to get whatever result you wanted at gerrymandering. And so they may not be fully fair maps. They'll be better than the current ones, but the justices did leave some wiggle room saying that they could consider partisan impact, not because they're trying to aid one side or the other, but because the partisan, to be independent, they need to make sure basically it doesn't unduly aid one side or the other, that they are really nonpartisan maps, which they have not been. So I think that absent I still think the Supreme Court thing, I don't know, Earl, I'm not an odds maker. I would say it's less than 50% the Supreme Court intervenes, but they could, right? Despite there not seeming to be grounds. But then the case will only create remedial maps and will therefore, the completely new maps, they could then draw later for the next election. These are going to be like a corrective maps for now, kind of like when, I don't know, Earl, when you get a temporary crown in a dentist office before you get a permanent crown, right? Then you have to wait a few weeks when they go and make that.
So Dr. Craig, you're saying that, the maps that are going to be drawn, that, for the sake of clarity, the true maps will really kind of take place in 2025. Is it safe to say that? Because
that is presuming the Supreme Court does intervene, not knowing what the parties will do, that is what the case says now, the ruling we had on December 22nd, last Friday. So, by the way, just to remind your listeners, anyone who may be new to this, because you have all these stations all over the state, Earl, on the Civic radio, via radio network, in the current the maps that were preceded this, which weren't as bad as the ones that brought in 2 years ago, but were really bad. we have a 99-seat state assembly. So in other words, in a very divided state, you would expect something, if it was a fair maps, like a 49 to a 50 to 49, right? That would be look like our presidential, right?
It's about
50
60 to
Republican
39 or something. I don't know. It's way out of kilter.
In 2018, Democrats got 53% of the vote. That's a landslide in Wisconsin, right? 53%. This is such an evenly divided state. And then they only got 36 assembly seats, which means the Republicans got 63 assembly seats. And so that's how bad this is definition of rigged. Okay, totally rigged, so only one party can win. When there's a landslide, the opposite party gets a supermajority. That's what the current maps are like. They were certainly better than that, but they could be natural Republican advantage in these maps still. But what it is going to do is going to endanger a ton of Republican incumbents. What we had is, and this is why our public policy has been so bad, we had a majority of Republicans never vulnerable to losing their reelection. So they could do anything. They could cut all the schools closing around the state, Earl, and the cuts in teachers when we had this huge budget surplus. They'd be people, when you have fair maps, people get thrown out of office for that kind of thing. They only got away with that kind of thing because they were invulnerable to the public, the people who are supposed to be their bosses and supposed to hold them accountable.
Dr. Craig, hold a thought. 844-967-2789 is the number. We'll return.
You reach out and I won't be there. Just my luck, you realize you should spend your life with someone. You could spend your life with someone. I'll be holding on. Yeah, now. Oh, baby. I'll be holding on. I'll be holding on. Down to the memory.
Listening to the Shaw, WAUK.
The mission of the Milwaukee LGBT Community Center is to further develop the vibrant lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community in the greater Milwaukee area. And they've been doing it for 25 years. The center delivers education, health promotion, and other community building services, meeting the needs of LGBT youth, adults, and their allies in the greater Milwaukee area. All powered by your generosity. Get to mkelgbt.org to see where your end-of-year donations can make magic happen all year long.
Roll into this Friday night and strike a chord of fun, food, and music at Foxview Lanes in Waukesha. A Friday night live music party kicks off at 8 p.m. and goes until midnight every Friday night. And the best part of this party, there's no cover charge. While you're having fun, grab dinner and take advantage of $2 off all sandwiches on Friday nights. This Friday night, enjoy the music and fun of Bail Jumpers, 2440 West Sunset Drive in Waukesha. Call 262-544-2010 or check out foxviewlanes.com.
Down around the corner, half a mile from here, see them both ain't running, and the box them disappear. That was, where would you be now? That no, I saw Miss Lucy down along the track. She lost her home and her family, and she won't be coming back. Without love, where would you be right now? Without love.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 844-967-2789. Text us that same number. Dr. Craig is my guest of Citizen Action. You know, Dr. Craig, you know, as we start, you know, wrapping up 2023, what do you want the listening audience to know about the impact they can have on government themselves, and that they have the ability and that there's room in the end for them to help work towards changing their own realities?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to mull over this new year, Earl, when we think about our obligations. And I think we have obligations as citizens. And I don't even mean the legal definition of citizen. Citizenship is also a word about us being citizens of a human community, right? Generally, regardless of whether anyone's granted you citizenship in a particular country, including this one. And so, but we live in a state where we have more influence than everyone else and who holds national power, because we have this ridiculous system where only 7 states decide who's president, right? And that has enormous consequences. I mean, I'll just give you one example, because at a time of, you know, a lot of religious speculation and reflection, like the holidays, we think about endings, end times, the ultimate, right? We do face runaway climate change, human generated, that would do unimaginable, unprecedented damage to humans, to human civilization in terms of mass death, mass dislocation, but it's fully within our power to control it. And we have a 6-year deadline, and President Biden is the first president to take serious action. He and got us a good amount of the way there, but not all the way there. We need to cut greenhouse emissions in half by 2030, which is very soon. So if we think about that, who is president now has a huge impact, because Donald Trump wants to pretend there is no climate crisis, ignore all science, so that he can enrich big fossil fuel companies, big for-profit utilities like your utility provider. That's part of the problem, a big part of the problem, and just ignore what needs to be done, and then let future generations and current generations. It's now. We see global warming now. You saw how warm Christmas was.
Yes.
Right, Come on. So this is not normal for Wisconsin, the upper Midwest. This is, it's the proof is right before, not before our eyes, right outside. And so, I mean, that's nice and pleasant, but it has terrible consequences. Potentially, but it doesn't take much of our wealth or capacity. We know how to do this. It will actually produce more prosperity. It actually opens up all sorts of opportunity for new jobs. And if we do it right, we can re-employ a lot of people who lost their jobs with the ravages of corporate destruction the last 50 years, deindustrialization, and what's been done to the local farm economy, the way we started this. So you can name other issues, like whether or not women have their constitutional rights to control their own bodies, reproductive health, and abortion, right? You can talk about a whole lot of important issues. We have the bigger role, and even if one can't vote, let's say you're legal resident, you can have a huge influence by being involved in organizations that affect this conversation, have the dialogue with average people across the state, a real personal conversations that you were mentioning earlier in the show. We need to do that on a large scale where thousands of people are playing their part as good citizens of human community, and talking to people to make sure that we can win this election. But I have a second thing: just winning is not enough. It needs to be understood for the winners, that is, if it is President Biden, what we expect him to do in order to earn and follow through on the trust that's been bestowed to him if he's given a second term. But there's no hope of any of these things with President Trump. That's what's to reflect upon. I would love if we had 2 equally compelling visions and approaches to our future from each party. That used to happen. It's not happening now, unfortunately, and that's not our fault, Earl. That's the fault of the party that has a front runner like a Donald Trump.
You know, Dr. Craig, you talked about, we take this for granted, the warm weather, the warmest summer in the history of the state of Wisconsin and Milwaukee, the warmest December in the history. I mean, these things aren't happening by happenstance. And yet there's still people who don't believe, in climate change. And I don't know how you're able to, outside of, having that one-on-one dialogue with somebody, to get them to understand, this is not, fictional, this is real.
I'll say something fairly controversial since we're in a, religious season, right? I don't understand how, this is me, an I statement, how you can say you believe in God and not believe in climate change, because if the world is created by a great creator and we're seeing this predictable warming, that our knowledge, our ability to get knowledge, technology, science will be driven by what has been given us, right? How we would ignore the signs of the times, using biblical language. They decide to ignore the signs of the times for their own enrichment.
Dr. Craig, well said. We'll talk soon. Have a happy new year. Thank everybody who made the show go. Thank you, Calvin. Couldn't do it without you. I'll be back on tomorrow. Up next, As Goes Wisconsin, Greg Bott and Jane McNair.